As a young adult, I have lived in one of the world's most densely populated cities, where houses don't occupy vast lands and they are built close to each other. So people form bonds with neighbors in short periods of time, sometimes as if they were the closest of kin, or sometimes too close that they learn of each other's secret lives. My experience of a life in Australia was nothing that I had expected. When I met my Australian husband, I was not really keen in moving out of my country. I never imagined growing old in Australia. I always imagined myself in some tropical island, in a cottage that I designed, where as an old woman, I would be wearing a colorful bonnet and serving platters of crabs and oysters to my grandchildren. Most mornings, I wake up to the loud laughter of the kookaburras. Across the room where we sleep is a vast land, a billabong, some goats and sheep, some trees, some old tractors, but no sight of neighbors to bond with.
Palamig kayo, palamig, ice cream.
Instead of hearing voices of children going off to school in the morning, the honking of jeepneys, and the calls of traveling vendors, I wake up to silence. In silence, I eat breakfast, I brush my teeth, and hang the clothes that I washed the previous night. I wonder if Marie Curie ever hung clothes while she tried to develop a scientific theory. When I hang my clothes, I think of creating art. Say, paint a picture of my face on canvas in acrylic. Perhaps paint all the colorful abstract things inside my head. The mind gets so busy when you have no one you could relate to. One of my closest friends back home always told me that we make the beds that we lay on. And I think about that now with a heavy heart. Perhaps heavy with loneliness or just an immense longing for the distant tropical home.
My home was always a very lively place. Lots of people, lots of stuff. You have a lot of decorations which express what you're about, and there was never a quiet moment like compared to here. It was like always something going, always lots of people, every day the phone is going.
The experience of migration varies from one individual to another. The ability of a migrant to adjust depends on many things: her attachment to her country, culture, family, and the life she left behind.
But to a migrant, home is still the country where she or he came from. And it was poignant, especially when your parents are still around. When my parents were around, there was a magnet that used to pull me to go home and visit.
For most migrants, the idea of home and family is central to her well-being. Cultural scholar Madan Saraf said home is often associated with pleasant memories, intimate situations, a place of warmth and protective security among parents, brothers, and sisters, and the people that you love. How does one deal with the loss of all this that is associated with home? People who leave home lose their sense of identity. they lose their sense of self.
Well, when you say migration, I always think of it that when you leave your country, you die. So there is a grieving process involved. A part of you dies when you leave your country. You leave behind your family, your friends, your way of life, your culture. And so there is a part of you which is dead. And you have to grieve for that. And it takes a while before you can really recover from that grieving process.
My first year in Australia was spent searching for what was familiar. I found myself clinging on things that have some semblance to what I was used to. The people, the language, and food. My husband and myself would travel long distances together just to meet people who came from my country and who share similar experiences. Jeanette Winterson, one of the writers I love reading during times of isolation, wrote that leaving home is never just a geographical or a spatial separation. It is an emotional separation, wanted or unwanted, steady or ambivalent. The first 2 years of migration were difficult and lonely. I felt alone and excluded even amidst a crowd. The smell of the air at sundown made me feel homesick. I once likened the feeling of being in a new country to being spun around for a long time. And when the spinning stopped, I stood on unsteady ground, and as Winterson wrote, I couldn't tell where north, south, east, and west is. Because as a new migrant, I lost my compass point, and I couldn't tell where I was actually at in my own life. The search for identity for every migrant is a long and sometimes painful process. Belonging to a group or finding employment is a pathway towards having an identity. During my first year, I joined a brief employment program where I met 2 interesting women. Both women are unique in their own ways. Regina was open, thoughtful, and articulate. Cos was reserved, calm, and sensitive. It took me 2 years to finally learn about the stories of their migrations. When Regina's husband, Maini, brought up the idea of migrating to Australia, the young, vibrant Regina was in for the adventure.
I came a long time ago. It's now 21 years, and why I actually wanted to come to Australia, because I had this passion for cooking. I still have, mainly for pastry cooking, and I changed my career in Germany. I changed from teaching chemistry and nutrition to pastry chefing, and I really loved it. And I always wanted to have my own business and to found my own business. You know, seeing no future on the teacher side in Germany, I thought, yeah, I met some Australians. I knew I had Australian relatives, and I wanted to come out here to found my own business.
But the process of migration had not been that easy for Maini and Regina.
And first we weren't accepted, and then I just want to figure out why didn't they accept us? I just couldn't believe they wouldn't accept us. And
with a point system at the time, Regina believed that they had enough points between the 2 of them to get through. So then she tried to find out what went wrong.
I mean, it took me quite a few people to find to get the solution. And he said, look, there's a mistake in your translation. And I said, oh, so what is the mistake? And he said, oh, you need 4 more letters in brackets. That's it. And instead of engineer, it said, for my husband, he was the first applicant, and it said engineer, and everyone thought he's an auto mechanic, and they forgot to put in the words graduated, GRAD, and that made...
That little mistake delayed the couple's migration to Australia. But then, when the correction was made, things went smoothly. The couple had to leave within 6 months, so they sold everything they had and boarded a plane to Sydney.
You know, it seemed really good in theory. You know, you think, oh yeah, great, you really want to go. And then when it came to the day when we finally went and we were on the airport and our friends were there and we stood there, and it was like all of a sudden it hit me that, well, I go now. Of course, we can always travel back and visit, but it's different. It will be just a drop in for a cuppa or something. You go. And so I went in the plane and I saw all those sad faces standing there, and I myself, you know, got really sad and I cried all the way. You know, I cried I just couldn't hold back. You know, I realized it really sank in. No, we're gone for a long while. You know. Well, at the beginning, when you start off, things around you are so different. Food is different. The behaviors are different. You know. You make new friends. You have to start from scratch with everything.
Even the rhythms of the day, the time when people are outside, the time when they're eating, the noise levels, what most people think is a social space, you know, the way we sit, the way we catch public transport, it's all different. And it can be quite alienating or discomforting for some people.
Even you think, you know, it's just another way of living, but I never imagined it to be so different.
The first few months, Regina looked for a job in order to gain that much-needed Australian experience. An experience that most Australian employers wouldn't give to any new migrant without an Australian experience. I always ask myself, how can I ever get one when all they tell me is that I don't have an Australian experience? And so, like most other migrants, including myself, Regina applied for work where she was most likely to get it, and where she thought there would be less language and cultural barriers, in businesses owned and run by another migrant.
Well, I found a bakery. They looked for a pastry chef, and it was a night shift work. And back then I didn't look much, you know, what do you earn and all this. It was so important for me to work and to just be in it. So I started working. I left home at 9 p.m. I worked all the way through till 12 noon next day, and I earned $200 a week. And that was just enough to have the petrol in the car. Actually, what triggered it all, why I stopped there, was one side it was not being paid the right way.
And you were working long hours?
And long hours, and when I was driving home, I had 60 k's one way, you know, to work. And when I was driving home, I fell asleep on the wheel.
So Regina left the bakery owned by a German family. Like Regina, having worked in businesses owned by other migrants, or where other migrants work, I had been disillusioned by the lack of camaraderie and sympathy of my fellow Asians.
These were people from your own country, where you came from, and they really used you. And I didn't realize it at the time because, you know, it was very, you know, when you first come over and you're not as familiar with the English language and you hear some of your home tongue, it is just, you feel straight away a bit more at home.
Regina then decided to leave this exploitative work, and she started baking on her own.
So we started on country markets, and we from the home kitchen I did a variety of slices, and then we sold it on a Sunday market, and I had such a good response. I was surprised, you know, getting such a good response. And then it happened that a lady approached us who wanted to open a cafe, and then a shop approached us who was a local cake shop, and they wanted to add a few more lines in, and so that's how somehow it started, that we sold to the public on the markets, but at the same time it was more cafes interested in being supplied.
They settled west of Brisbane, where they found a place in a beautiful countryside with an old wooden house, which they converted into a business place. Within months, Miney and Regina planted trees, renovated the house, built a cafe, and run the business. Miney, being an engineer, built 4 water tanks within the property in anticipation of a water shortage. It wasn't long that Regina became known for her pastries, and she was invited to cater for cafes, restaurants, community events, and multicultural festivals. Her business grew, and she delivered from Prenzlau to Brisbane and Toowoomba. Her business got bigger when she started delivering to the Great South Pacific Express under the Heritage Train Company. Everything went well for them, the business was running, and they even got along well with their new neighbors. But as the business grew, for some unexplainable reasons, the neighbors started displaying some really negative behavior towards them. This behavior intensified and tormented Regina and Miney for several years.
And things happened, interruptions, destructive things. On an everyday basis, something happened from the neighbor side, which first we put that sort of... we didn't pay attention first because we thought it was just accidental. And then we realized, we hearing yelling, and we had things happening like, our garden, 20 meters length, was all poisoned. The plants were all dying off. I thought, that is not just, an accident. And so we had things where it was just so exhausting dealing with this all the time, that somebody, you thought you knew would do something like that, and then the water tank got demolished. Well, the top was broken off with, hard equipment, and the fence wiring was cut, and every day something else happened, and then we heard yelling, and first I didn't really hear the content of the words, but then I heard the words and I thought, I can't hear that. That can't be right. He was yelling Heil Hitler. And I thought, oh my God, did I hear that? And then we realized this neighbor was yelling at us like that.
Regina tried to make sense of the harassment by trying to find out from the neighbor himself what was going on. But he avoided this confrontation and continued tormenting them for 3 years on a daily basis. The harassment progressed to more life-threatening experiences for Regina.
And then he was stalking, and when I was on my morning runs, he would already at 6 a.m. he would be up waiting in his car, running after me, and there were 2 occasions where he speeded up the car and he almost ran me over. And I was really scared then. I was so scared. I just didn't know what is he going to do, and I was so exhausted, and I don't know which came first, but I got really sick. I had a back injury. I ruptured 2 discs then, and then I was in hospital. And on the day I came back home from hospital, I could only lie in bed then. And on that day, he actually had his next attack on us, and all we could do is we called back then the health inspector, because he had a dead cadaver of an animal and dumped it right like 10 meters under my bedroom window.
Oh.
Just on the fence line to his property. So because it was on his fence line, we couldn't really clean it up, and so we called the health inspector, knowing that we also had full premises there, and we can't have this. And it was one of the hottest days in February, and flies everywhere, and I couldn't move out of the bed. I just we were really, we didn't know what to do anymore. Police didn't help. The health inspector came and gave instructions to have to dispose it. He disposed it, and then as soon as the health inspector was gone, he dumped it again. That happened for almost a week, and then all our energy, it just, we thought we're gonna go insane,
Despite all the daily harassment, the threats, the absence of peace of mind, Regina and Miney continued on with their pastry business. They decided to stay on the property that they built together as a young, adventurous couple who was simply in search of a life outside Germany.
Thought, we're strong enough, we'll, get through this. That's what we thought, and then I got the news that my brother is really, really sick, and he was given only a few months to live, and so this changed a whole lot. This changed everything, because I realized, what am I doing? Life, health is so precious. What am I doing? I'm here, my brother is over there. So all I wanted is to see him. I couldn't, I was sick. So I postponed it, and by the time I was ready to go, he died.
Losing her brother led Regina to some important realizations, which served as a catalyst for her and Miney to make one more important decision: to leave the property and start a new life again. With no certainty, they decided to move out of their house.
We moved out, left everything, and rented in town to feel safe. And the first night we moved and rented, that was like, what a relief, we can sleep through. No floodlights in our bedroom, no truck running the whole night in front of your bedroom, no waking up, no dog barking at you constantly. And so it was a big relief. It was actually, if I look at it now, I think, yeah, I survived it, I came through it.
All throughout this ordeal, Regina and Miney sought the help of the police. Over the years, the police kept on asking for evidences.
It was hard. Especially because there was no police, there was no support from the police. We thought, maybe they're all our mates, or I don't know. It just, we filed report, we faxed reports, that was it.
The whole experience left Regina and Miney emotionally and psychologically drained. Regina struggled with sickness after the whole incident. They were prompted to sell the business and the home for a low price. After the sale, Regina fell ill and was devastated.
I was at the point I would have taken my life. Honestly, if Lifeline wouldn't have been around, I wouldn't be here anymore. Oh, it was so debilitating. Imagine you can't move because you're sick. You're in bed. You're in pain. You left all this behind. Where do you go from here?
Regina wasn't sure if what her neighbor did was caused by racial hatred or not, as it is often difficult to point your fingers on racist-motivated acts. Whatever it was, like other committed forms of harassment and racist acts, It is hard to prove and confusing for the victims.
I'm born way past the Second World War. It has nothing to do with me. There's cruel people all around the world. But it's that history. Well, you're German born. That's what you carry with you, that sort of load of your ancestors. You know?
There is too much prejudice based on discourse and on the unknown or the little negative assumptions they know of others and not on actuality.
I mean, it's not about nationality. What nationality are you? What person are you? That's about, you know, we all can contribute in a way. It doesn't matter where we're born. If they would know, you know, if you had a different face, they would know you're from the Philippines. Would they treat you differently? I bet they would, yeah. Then this wouldn't be an issue, what country you come from.
Whatever it was that happened to Regina, whether it was a racially motivated crime or not, one thing was definite. It hurt and destroyed Regina and Miney's peaceful and happy life. And what is the punishment for anyone who has tormented someone this long and this painfully?
We were unsuccessful in criminalising racism in this country. There are provisions of racial vilification and racial hatred under the Section 18C of the Race Discrimination Act, but the present Attorney General, George Brandis, has proposed removing those and amending them quite severely, and I and several other organisations have campaigned quite hard to stop that happening. So we're in a state of flux, but the correct answer is that it's basically a civil offence.
If a racist act can be proven, then the victim can receive an apology or a compensation, only if the act was committed within the workplace. Sadly, most of these acts are not complained about and are just dismissed.
Yeah, the processes are themselves off-putting. They're quite legalistic. They require a familiarity with the system, which a lot of people don't have, whether they're migrants or not. So I think that's a major problem. I think also the frequency, the everyday nature of racial harassment for some people means that they haven't got the energy to complain about something that is such a frequent occurrence.
After a long time of trying to recover from the trauma, Regina found ways to forget. Today, Regina still bakes only for friends, but no longer on commercial scale.
We went through so much hardship in the last 6 years. Still, you know, even we went through that now, I feel very different about it, you know.
You look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, if I wouldn't have gone through that, if I wouldn't have lived that contrast, I wouldn't be who I am now. And I mean, I create my life every moment of the day, and the future is unwritten. It starts now with the way I think.
I don't have to tell you, it's been a long year, and I'm still counting the cost. It's got me to wonder what I'm doing here. Yeah, I'm feeling kinda lost.
Ko's journey from Fukuoka, Japan to Noosa, Australia was brought about by her strong desire to learn English. Like Regina and Miney, Kos was young, vibrant, and full of ambition. As a travel agent, she was sending her clients to other countries to study English. She herself wanted to learn English, and so she considered going to the States.
Looking over my shoulder, they're coming on strong. Everything I've ever
I wanted to go to the States, and that was really hard because after 9.11, yeah, visa constriction it's getting really hard. So I gave up, and then once I came here and have a look around the places, then I sort of I fall in love in here. So, okay, let's come to Australia. I thought if I speak English, my universe going to be bigger, and that is will be more opportunity. Yeah. So I just wanted to expand my world. I really felt English is very important language.
Many of her clients had been to Noosa, where they had their courses. With the dream of expanding her world, Cos packed her bags and headed on a solitary trip to Noosa.
Beautiful, beautiful place. Bit expensive, yes, that's right. But back in 9 years ago, I've been here for 9 years.
Yeah.
There weren't so much people there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did
So-
it look like before?
It's tiny little village.
Not a lot of buildings.
No, not much building, not much things going on. So quiet and calm, peaceful.
He was generously open.
Staying with an Irish family on a homestay opened her eyes to the reality that her inability to express herself in English would be a huge obstacle in her enjoyment of life in Australia.
One of the hardest experience I ever had, and because Irish accent is different, something different than Australian accent. So I really couldn't pick up the words what they're saying, and also my Japanese accent English is made them confused as well. So there was not much communication going on. Trying, but we couldn't communicate well from both sides. And one day, I think Mom already got a upset, and she was screaming, "Oh, cause your English is really confusing me. I don't understand you. I don't know what's going on." And she was like something like that. She was saying something like that. Yeah, and screaming, and okay, I just went back to my room. That was that. Since that happened, I really thought myself, and maybe it is really harder to keep going to homestaying.
At about the same time, Cos was lucky to have found work as a waitress and a dishwasher in a Japanese restaurant. She also found accommodation in the house of one of her Japanese co-workers. Although feeling lost and homesick, Cos was determined to reach her higher goals.
I really wanted to live here, not only to study. And inside of my head was saying, I need to get really good job to be able to keep going my life here. So on my shoulders, I've got a lot of pressure. Well, I created it myself though, but a lot of pressure here, and every day, I just wanted to speak English better, and I just wanted to find a better job, sort of things every day, in my head. That's big, makes me crazy.
Cos felt she had nothing to be proud of at the time. She stopped communicating with her family. For most migrants, the social pressure and expectations from families back home of a greener pasture outside their countries is enormous. These thoughts make a migrant feel a sense of failure when she has not achieved what she had hoped for. There are hundreds of overqualified migrants in Australia doing labor work who keep the reality of their lives from their families back home.
Sharing every language.
I don't want to make them worry about me. I want to make them too happy. So I wanted to give a really good news all the time. Yeah. So, and the job is find a job or good job is one of their concern. Well, because of my English, I could find only waitress or chef or cleaner. Otherwise, no one's wouldn't be hire me or could be dishwasher, yes, but that's including like sort of a waitress stuff. Yeah. So those job is no offense to the people who does those job, but I really didn't know. I didn't know that job wise is so limited for me. Yeah, until I really get here.
They still might feel that on balance it was worth it if their kids could, through growing up here and being educated here, do well. Parents, are very keen often to see their children do well and will therefore put up with their own loss of status. But it's very sad to see that happen, and for some people it does eat away at them in serious ways, particularly if they have long-term unemployment. I think people can deal with lower status employment if they're listened to, respected, if their colleagues are decent to them.
On my third year in Australia, it dawned on me that things might have changed in my home country, and I am now in between two worlds and two choices. It's either I make it here or I go back home.
Inside of me was fighting because something not what I wanted to do, but I have to do. Otherwise, I don't have any choice to have a life here. So that frustration comes down to the depression.
And how did you cope with it?
How did I? Well, I had to, right?
Did you cry?
Of course I cried. Of course I cried all the time. Yeah, I still cry sometimes, but not as bad as before.
For most migrants, the realization that there is little choice could be very confronting. Like myself, having worked most of my life within the academia, I found myself doing menial works in cafes, in lodges, and in a plant nursery. Cos found work in an office issuing construction permits. And like Cos, I have experienced mistreatment in workplaces.
My job over there was taking a phone call from all different clients. Could be builder, could be clients, or could be from councils. Yeah. Plus screening a full of documents. And every day they get over hundreds of mail coming from everywhere from Australia. And a phone call is it's keep calling. We keep getting phone call from every day from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So the work was pretty busy. Then anyway, so I went to, because I've got this job, that was a full-time job, that was great, good salary, and it's because full-time, it's not easy to get. So I was really happy and started my job.
As time rolled by.
But then Cos' jubilation about this job was short-lived.
Then she told me I would like to fire me. I mean, she would like to fire me because of your English, and we have getting some complaints.
So, did you feel like they didn't give you a chance?
No, they didn't give me any chance anymore. They just don't want me. They don't want to have me there anymore. Mm-hmm. But even when I started very first time, day first, I really didn't feel any welcoming feeling at all. And the girls over there wasn't really talking to me. And always I had to go to talk. And they didn't even say good morning to me. Like I had to go and I have to say good morning to everyone. Yeah. So that was, yeah, I felt really bad. And I didn't want it to giving up because I'm not really person who gave up things. Yeah, I'm happy to have a challenge all the time. Yes. Yeah.
rejected and having no one to share feelings of rejection could impact a migrant's well-being and perception of self. Like Cos, I have been to places where I felt unwelcome by co-workers. I guess I never liked the energy I feel from people who don't seem to like me, but try hard to be civil. It makes me sad because it dehumanizes me. As a loving, thinking, feeling individual, I want to be treated as such. There is this kind of bigotry that is hard to neither conceal nor deny, because one can smell it strongly in the air. There is no point in denying it.
But I think we should realize that we're not living here by themselves or by ourselves, and we always need to help each other, and also we need to be in equal. Yeah. So no one look me down, but I don't look anyone's down. Same as them. So probably I will. If someone said to me something like that, then I'm happy to talk. Like, please do not look me. If you do, I don't know if you do that, but if someone's looking me down, please do not look me down.
You know, not many Australians want to actually confront that idea about racism and admit the racism that's happening. You know, we talked about denial and all of that, and it's the same thing. You know, I'm a multicultural worker, and to some degree, there will be part of me that is racist because it's my cultural conditioning. So it's almost like this thing of so many things around me are actually conditioning me to think in that way. So to think that, you know, Western knowledge is better, to think somehow that Western ways of doing things are somehow more advanced or more superior than other ways of doing, is to think that my view of the world is a superior view of the world. That's all around me everywhere.
Cos' dream to work as a travel agent was very far from the reality of life she was living. Feeling lonely, Cos found comfort in a relationship with another migrant from Italy. This relationship blossomed and they decided to get married. Then Cos found herself in another challenging situation.
Because he's Italian, I'm Japanese.
Italian and Japanese.
Yeah, we live in Australia. So 3 different cultures going on.
Yes.
His tradition is not my tradition.
Yeah.
My tradition is not his tradition. And our tradition is not in Australian tradition. It was so hard, mixing too much, too complicated.
Cos found her husband's culture to be too traditional in its expectation of the role of women in the family. She also felt her husband wasn't ready for a lifetime commitment. It didn't take long before this marriage ended in divorce.
I decided because the different direction, and I noticed that these two different directions never get in the same line again. And yeah, well, one day, once when I realized, oh, this is not gonna work, that since then my life has been hell. But the situation made me really nothing. Like, I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. I didn't think I am a girl or lady, or I didn't feel I was a human, or because of lack of confidence. And I failed this marriage. That was full of negative. Yeah. Why I failed this marriage? Because of me. Because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't doing well. I wasn't mature enough. Or it's all sort of bits and bits. Maybe I wasn't good looking, or I wasn't good looking for my husband, or maybe it's all bits of bits. As I thought, all sort of things, because of all sort of things, that's why he didn't like me, or that's why we failed our marriage.
Alone and without a family to console her, she buried herself in work. The loneliness and the loss of self-esteem also drove her to resort to drinking and the use of drugs.
Living by myself in here, this country, this Sunshine Coast is really, really hard. And to be able to have a life, that time I did 5 different jobs. I did work, some weekends work, or when I get day off from coffee shop, I did cleaning, house cleaning, and also nighttime. Coffee shop and cleaning is always in the morning, so nighttime I work this restaurant. And also, I was doing my business, market business every Sunday or Saturday, so I was doing the market too. And one more, I was also doing grocery. I was selling some grocery to Japanese people here. Like exhausting is another feeling. Another thing is to have a terrible, terrible feeling. But to be able to keep going, I found this drug that keeps my energy pumped, like keep my energy up. Mm-hmm. So then that's the reason I started to take this drug from my one of my musician friend. Then drug go. As soon as I start drug, I want to have more drugs. I want to have more things. Then my drinkings go heavier and heavier.
So you mix drugs and drinking?
Yeah, I do mix, yes. Yeah, I mix everything. It's really bad. Then one day I took too many drugs before I go to work, and that was a kitchen job at the coffee shop, and I think I was cutting something, but I just couldn't remember, and I was so frustrated, so angry because of these drugs, and I was swearing everywhere, every time. I was really bad behavior. Then because I think took too much, my heart rate went too much. Basically, I just passed out.
That incident was an eye-opener for Cos. She knew if she continued doing what she was doing, she would eventually destroy her life. It was also at this time that she befriended people who were into strength and conditioning program at CrossFit. So she started training, and the training helped her regain her self-confidence and self-esteem.
Like this, so I had to determine myself, not taking any more drugs, not taking any more alcohol or whatever. Just back to healthy lifestyle. Yeah. So, but to get out from there to healthy lifestyle, it's so easy to say, but mentally, it took a long time. Yeah. To come back very healthy, smiley face every day.
So, how long did it take you to finally find a job that you really love?
9 years. Yeah.
So can you tell me about this new job?
Well, since I wanted to change my life from darkness to healthy way, I started to do some exercise training, and I've met CrossFit. Yeah, that sports or fitness changed all my life here.
Today, Cos feels very much accepted by the friends and colleagues at work.
Where's home to you now?
Home? Pretty much here. Yeah. I miss my family. I miss my friend, of course. But I think I really connected here and belong here, and I really appreciate that.
Every now and then, I would meet new and interesting migrants in multicultural gatherings. Each time I get to know one, the more I see the commonalities of our experiences. But the thing that amazes me the most is the way each migrant comes out of a challenging life and ends up so much better than when they first arrived. This gives me hope in making a life in Australia. Vivienne is of Syrian background who was born and raised in Sudan. Her family was one of the two Catholic families in El Damer, a town in the north of Sudan where Muslim is the dominant religion. Vivienne was raised in the conservative Catholic faith in a close-knit and extended family. Belonging to a minority group and living among the Muslims posed no problem at all to Vivienne and her family.
I grew up among the Muslim community, and Islam was not really an issue for me as an individual. However, being a female and white and Christian, it was a concern for my parents more than me as an individual. I grew up with Islam.
Only when the Sudanese government imposed the Sharia law that life began to change in Sudan.
And they made it really hard for non-Muslim to be free, practicing their beliefs or living their life normally.
What were the restrictions to Christians?
The Sharia law imposed on non-Muslims to really cover their face and wear very long sleeves, and not to socialize or to mix with men. It was very hard when we go to any social event. We have to sit separated, the male in one side and the female in another side, even in the elevator. If we are going to an event and in the elevator, we cannot be men and women in the elevator, unless husband and wife, and we had always to carry our marriage certificate, because you can be stopped by anyone who claimed to be a military officer. And we had always our marriage certificate. If I'm going with my husband, I had to carry our marriage certificate to just show that we are husband and wife.
At this time, Vivienne was already married and working for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, while her husband was a successful businessman. One night, her husband, together with his two brothers, were arrested by the military for reasons that they do not know about.
And it happened that one day, my husband was in his office, and two gentlemen came to the office and they just asked him to follow them. And at that time, it was common. We knew from other friends and family members that stories about this kind of abduction. And it was horrible time, because the person who was abducted, the family lost their whereabouts and never came back home. Luckily, it wasn't the case for my husband because of my work with the United Nations and the support of a friend from the protection department. She really helped me in communicating straight away. And he just turned to me and he said, "Vivienne, why you don't really apply to settle to Australia? There is a program." And I didn't know, because I was not in that department. And he said, "Okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow." So the next day he gave me the form, the application form, and I filled it, and we were accepted as refugees under the special humanitarian program for Christian Sudanese.
Vivienne and her husband and their only son were granted refugee status in 1993. Just immediately after they arrived, Vivienne had to leave Australia for another mission with the UN.
when we arrived Sydney, and I have in Sydney families who really came to Australia as migrants, not as refugees, who have been longer from the late 80s, and they were not really, they did not manage to find a satisfactory job. And when we came, that was the first reaction from them. Oh, they were whinging, they are still on the dole, they are not happy, they lost their social ties, their life, their identity, blah, blah. And for me, it was a big shock. I said, wow. I turned to my husband, I said, what is this? We are coming here. And because I was with the UN, and my husband has his own business, we were living a good life, other than the situation that forced us to leave our country.
A few days later, Vivienne received a call from Geneva informing her that she was selected for Armenia to become a UN expatriate.
So I went. After 3 weeks, I left Australia and I was granted open visa, and I went to Armenia. That was in March, and in May, my husband and my son joined me, and we lived the 4 years in Armenia.
For her work in Armenia, Vivienne was presented a certificate by the UNHCR in 1995, the year it was awarded the UNESCO Peace Prize. Prior to that, the UNHCR also received the Nobel Peace Prize for their work with refugees in Sudan, where Vivienne was involved in the emergency operations.
This emergency situation happened in Sudan, in the eastern part of Sudan, where we had influx of refugees.
From Sudan, Vivienne continued to work in the fields in places like Somalia, Kenya, Armenia, Belarus, Bangladesh, and finally in Bosnia, her last field work before she finally moved to Australia in 1999.
It was tough for me when I came back in 1999, when I settled, and at that time we were engaged in the Kosovo operation. However, my son, when I knew I was going to Bosnia, I knew it is a war zone, and I knew it is a non-family duty area, so I could not take my son. And I knew also that we are going to settle in Australia. So we decided, me and my husband, that we are going to put our son in a boarding school. And my mom was really looking after him on the weekend. So he will spend 5 days at the boarding school, and the weekend he will come to my mom. However, in June 1999, I lost my mother. And I came from Bosnia for her funeral, and I decided to take my son out. And with my husband, he was a volunteer in Gorazde in Bosnia, and we agreed that when he finishes his 3 months contract in September, he will stay with my son, and then I will go back to my work.
Then things didn't happen as planned. Vivienne's husband came home very sick from Bosnia. He was diagnosed with a heart condition. She took a leave of 3 months from her UN work, but not seeing any improvement in her husband's condition, she resigned from the UN and looked after her family.
And from 2000, started looking for a job. And that was the big disappointment, I can call it, because I was not emotionally or mentally prepared that I will face a problem in finding a job after 20 years with the UN and with my rich achievements in different countries and in different operations. However, I applied to many jobs and I have been to many interviews.
Most of the interviews didn't end up in employment. Vivienne and her husband were unemployed for the most part of their first 4 years.
And that was my first work experience in Australia. Yes, it was in Liverpool Hospital, but it was not in the hospital. It was like a project. It was a community project. And the job was for an education officer for the Sudanese community. I said, okay, that's good. At least I can give something to the Sudanese community. I was accepted to that position, and then I found it was not an education officer job. It was a coordinator. I had to bring a representative from Centerlink to tell them about Centerlink system. I had to bring someone from Medicare to tell them about the Medicare system and things like that. For me, it wasn't really satisfactory. That's one. Number two, the pay was absolutely a joke. And I was really, from memory, I remember that my pay was $10.35 or 36 cents. From working with the UN to that lifestyle that I used to have, coming here to a $10, and it was a part-time. I think it was 2 days only. However, I wasn't satisfied at all, and I wasn't able to accept the settlement, and it affected my self-esteem. It affected every job I went. Oh, do you have any Australian experience? And I just say that I just arrived. We just settled. I don't have any Australian experience. Oh, do you have any Australian qualification? My dear, I'm telling you, I just arrived. No, if you want me, I'm happy to enroll. And that is exactly what I did. Immediately, I knew about TAFE, and I went and I enrolled to get an Australian qualification. I did my business diploma, and I did the diploma in marketing management.
Even with an Australian qualification and a substantial amount of experience in the UN, Vivian still couldn't find a good job. This almost made her lose faith in the Australian government system.
And I was the one who worked 20 years helping refugees, dealing with refugee issues on daily basis. And I became a refugee, and I found myself hopeless and vulnerable in finding solution to myself being a refugee, because I don't have the control. And that affected, I felt that I was just a number, no value whatsoever, and no one was interested at least to engage me and see how I can give.
In my career, I have done several fieldwork researches and documentary photography work that brought me to places and to the lives of people in the communities. I have vivid memories of all these times, the faces, the way of life, the generosity and the kindness of people in the most deprived communities in rural Asia. In a way, I guess, I wish to relive this life I left behind. Knowing that I can still contribute, I refuse to be reduced to being just a number. Migration to Australia shouldn't be the end of the road for me or for anyone. As each door closed on me, I felt my old self drifting away. Proving oneself is such a tiring experience when each door is closing one after the other, and when your talent is overlooked because you were judged on the basis of your foreign name, your accent, or the way you look. It is challenging to prove oneself, yet it is a very taxing emotional experience, especially within a system full of stereotypes and misinformation about others based on ignorance.
For me, not just an issue of how migrants feel, it's also a squandering, a wasting of massive talent and massive skills that could improve the national gross domestic product by 20 or 30%. I mean, we've got people cooking food and driving cabs who are engineers and doctors, and this is insane, just because of arrogance and closed minds and people saying things like, I don't want to have to do the work of understanding somebody's accent. And so Australia is a very monolingual country, probably of anywhere in the world.
In my opinion, it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. The government has to look at valuing the resources that they have and how they can support these individuals to give their best to the well-being of the society. I think it's a waste of resources that the government already has, and they don't value them. They are not taking them seriously. And in my opinion, migrants who decide to come to leave their roots or to leave their background, their country, their home, their relatives, their friends, their culture, their everything, and decide to really come to a new environment, a new society. This is a brave, tough decision. Doing or making that tough, brave decision, these people are already committed to make a better life if they get the support that they require to just cross the bridge and prove themselves.
Vivian's husband found a job entering data for the census. He did this job for 6 months before he finally passed away, leaving Vivian alone with their young son.
When my husband passed away and I left Sydney and I moved to Queensland, I thought, and I was still struggling with accepting the settlement, accepting my decision to really settle. I went and I had the opportunity to go back to Armenia, where I have lots of government friends and friends as well. So I went to Syria, I went to Sudan, and I went to Armenia, and I really devoted 3 months for this trip with the main purpose to really find out where I will fit in these countries. And it's very surprising to say I could not fit in neither. Because even though I worked 4 years in Armenia and I know it ins and outs, this time that I am out of Armenia, things changed, and I have grown up so much that I could not even go back and fit. The same with Sudan, the same with Syria. And that made me accept my decision to settle. And that helped me to be grounded. And since then, I took a different direction.
When she came back, Vivian didn't want to go through the experience of knocking at doors and being knocked back. She wanted to start something where she could best use her energy and talents. She mortgaged her home in Sydney to have the capital for a medical center bulk billing business. But establishing a business didn't come without challenges. The red tape was something that Vivian had to overcome.
I think one of the big challenges I really faced, and I felt it is a discrimination based on my accent, is to do with a department that is in charge of approving or preparing the process for overseas trained doctors. That was a big challenge for me, and I had to work so hard finding doctors who will accept bulk billing. And when I present a doctor, oh no, this is not, this required that, I didn't really feel that they were caring enough to support me to really identify. And I'm not speaking about doctors that are really useless. I will never accept that. I'm giving them doctors that are really good, but they need some support to really make it, and they were not supportive.
But still, Vivian patiently waited until she got where she needed to operate the business. Today, the business is going well and has purchased another bulk billing practice in Koroy. She also employed a number of multicultural medical practitioners and staff.
Now I have 5 doctors in my practice, and the 5 doctors are of different cultures. I have a doctor from New Zealand, a doctor from Bangladesh, a doctor from Burma, Myanmar, and 2 doctors from England. And I have my staff, the reception staff. I have 1 from Holland, 1 from Egypt, 1 from Italian background, and 1 New Zealand nurse.
Gotta make up my mind, and I gotta make up my mind, and I gotta make up my mind. Ooh.
I wondered many times how people who knew no other life than the life that they are living at the moment, can fully empathize with the sadness of those who have been uprooted from the places they were born. I wonder if Australians would see us differently if they, with their high professional qualifications, had lived, for instance, in cosmopolitan Bangkok or Shanghai and had to survive doing menial work because no one wants to hire a person with an Australian accent or an Anglo-Saxon name. They say hope is the remedy for the disillusioned. I see a flicker of hope still in the horizon. Who knows, maybe one day I can hold my head up high here on this land that I long to embrace me. Or perhaps somewhere else, where I still breathe the same air and I will still be bathing under the same sun.
The sun is sketching spider webs among the morning leaves, and the day's so clear and beautiful that it's almost make-believe. It seems to me that the grass is greener right here under my feet. And don't it come a sweet relief? Oh, between birth and death, what will you choose? Will you give to those you love and let them give love back to you?